When somebody first sees an insect, their reaction is probably ew. The majority of people think the same thing. However, the best way to combat disgust and fear is with knowledge. So most likely, the reason you are watching this video is to learn. So that's what we're gonna do. Why should we care about insects? The first reason we should care about insects is pollination. Pollinating is the job of many insects, mainly wasps, hornets, and bees. The insect will find a flower and collect its nectar. During this, it gets covered in the flower's pollen, and it spreads it to other areas when finding new flowers. The bee is walking over these flowers and digging into them with its head and legs. The plant seems to be made of many small flowers, forcing the bee to walk all over it, which causes the flower's pollen to stick to the bee's legs and head. This benefits the plant when the bee moves to different areas. The bee is walking over the red protrusions with pollen tips. The flower is shaped like an ellipse, so the bee has to walk on top to find the nectar. The yellow pollen tips of the protrusions cause the bee to get pollen on its legs and underside, benefiting the flower. In all, the pollinator insect benefits by collecting nectar, and the flower benefits by getting its pollen spread to new areas. Next, let's take a look at some of the unique features that make insects so awesome.
Insects either have a complete or incomplete life cycle. Now let's compare them. The incomplete life cycle, also known as a simple life cycle, has only 3 stages: egg, nymph, and adult. On the other hand, a complete life cycle has 4 stages: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. The red admiral butterfly has a complete metamorphosis from an egg into a butterfly. During the pupal stage, the caterpillar's old body transforms and a new body forms inside a protective shell, known as the chrysalis. The life cycle of the Stichophilia bisalona, also known as a buffalo tree hopper, has just 3 stages: egg, nymph, and adult. This means this insect has an incomplete life cycle. It's amazing how the exoskeleton sheds 10 times during the nymph stage in the process of becoming an adult. Now let's look at some physical adaptations that all insects have in common.
All insects are different in their own ways, but they all share these body parts: a head, thorax, and abdomen. Another feature they share are 6 jointed legs. Because insects share the same habitats, each species has slightly different adaptations. For example, wasps and bees both do the same job of collecting nectar, but they have different legs. All insects' legs contain femurs, tibias, and tarsals. The Carolina grasshopper has legs made to help it move through its environment, which is the grass. It has 2 different types of legs: 4 smaller legs up front, with small hooks on their tarsals, and 2 bigger, more powerful back legs with large femurs. Its back legs thrust it into the air, and its front legs latch onto any plant surfaces the insect may leap to, for example, a blade of grass. The Luna moth, unlike the Carolina grasshopper, has only 1 type of legs. When the Luna moth lands on a tree, its tarsals latch to the bark because of the texture and small ridges on them. This feature helps the moth to thrive in its woodlands. Both the Carolina grasshopper and the Luna moth have evolved to survive in their environment. If you take a look, you will find that most insects are picky about the plants that they eat and take shelter in. This is because their bodies evolve features for those specific plants. But what happens when those plants get overrun? All energy animals need comes from plants. The main group of animals that transfer the energy from the plants to the other organisms is insects. Taking away these plants that the insects need could cause the food web to collapse. Insects have grown accustomed to native plants that have been in their region for a very long time. Invasive species, on the other hand, are the ones that are new and not familiar to the native animals. They have a bad influence on the ecosystem. They take over habitats and choke out native species, not leaving them enough resources to survive. Humans have destroyed so much wildlife just to clear land for ourselves. If we begin to plant more native plants wherever we can, then we will be giving back to the insects and other organisms that need these plants. As you can see, the introduction of invasive plants is a huge problem for insects. Another is climate change.
All insects died and climate change was the cause of it. Climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns caused by an increase of CO2 levels in the atmosphere. Climate change has negatively impacted the insects by changing their migration patterns and confusing them.
Climate change has affected the red admiral butterfly by messing up their migration patterns. When it gets too hot, the red admiral butterfly tends to move further north and stay until they're ready to go south. However, with climate change increasing, they do not know when to go back and forth. To reduce the effects of climate change, we should stop burning fossil fuels and try to use more solar energy. Carpenter ants use temperature to tell time. When the temperature drops just a half of a degree Celsius, their foraging time may be reduced by as much as 9 hours. This would be a problem only if the climate in their habitat becomes cooler.
Humans could never survive without insects on this planet because the insects help to create the ecosystem essential to our survival. If we start sharing our landscape with insects, we could most likely stop extinction of important species. Here are 3 ways that you can help insects in your own backyard. First, bring native plants in gardens and do not bring invasive plants to them. Second, don't use pesticides, but instead use more beneficial products. Finally, do not rake up all of the leaves in fall, because insects can use them for food and shelter.